The tranquilizer dart missed her neck by inches. Maya felt the rush of air as it whizzed past, embedding itself in the bark behind her. The elephant's eyes locked onto hers through the darkness, wide with terror and recognition. Blood streamed from a gash on the animal's side where poachers had tried to hack off her tusks while she was still conscious. They'd failed. Now they wanted her dead as a witness to their crime. Maya pressed herself against the massive body, feeling the rapid heartbeat thundering through tons of muscle and bone. Her fingers found the wound, sticky and warm. The elephant trumpeted, a sound of agony that echoed through the African night. Voices shouted in the distance. Footsteps crashed through undergrowth. They were coming back. 3 weeks ago, Maya had been a veterinary student in London, studying textbooks and dreaming of fieldwork. Now she crouched in Kenyan wilderness, wanted by ivory smugglers who'd already killed 2 rangers. The sanctuary director lay in a hospital bed, his spine shattered by the same men hunting her now. She was alone with an animal everyone said was too traumatized to save. The elephant they called Ghost had arrived at the sanctuary 6 months before Maya. Rescued from a circus that went bankrupt, Ghost had spent 20 years performing tricks, while handlers beat her with bullhooks. Her body bore scars like a roadmap of suffering. Her spirit seemed broken beyond repair. When other elephants gathered at the watering hole, Ghost stood apart, swaying in a neurotic rhythm that never stopped. The sanctuary staff whispered that she'd never recover. Some suggested euthanasia would be kinder. Maya had thought differently. She'd spent hours sitting near Ghost's enclosure, never approaching, just present. She'd sung softly, read books aloud, offered fruit from a distance. For weeks, Ghost ignored her completely. Then one morning, the elephant had taken a single step closer, then another. By the time the poachers struck, Ghost trusted Maya enough to follow her voice. That trust was about to be tested. A flashlight beam swept across the trees. Maya heard the distinctive click of a rifle being loaded. Ghost trembled, her massive legs threatening to buckle. The dart that had missed contained enough sedative to drop her within minutes. Once she fell, the poachers would finish what they'd started. They'd take her tusks, leave her body for scavengers, and disappear into the network of corrupt officials who protected them. Maya's phone was gone, dropped somewhere during the chase. The sanctuary was 3 miles away, through terrain crawling with armed men. Ghost couldn't run. The wound in her side was deep, possibly fatal if infection set in. Every breath the elephant took came with a visible shudder of pain. But Maya had something the poachers didn't expect. She had Ghost's trust, and she had knowledge they couldn't imagine. During her final year of veterinary school, Maya had written her thesis on elephant cognition and emotional bonding. She'd studied how elephants communicated through infrasound, how they mourned their dead, how they formed societies more complex than most people realized. She'd learned that elephants never forgot kindness or cruelty. Ghost remembered every beating, every humiliation, every moment of suffering. But she also remembered Maya's gentle presence, the patient hours, the soft words. Maya placed her palm flat against Ghost's chest, feeling the frantic rhythm beneath leathery skin. She began to hum, low and steady, a vibration that traveled through her hand into the elephant's body. It was a technique she'd read about but never attempted. Elephants used infrasound to communicate across miles. Could a human voice, transmitted through touch, calm a panicked animal? Ghost's breathing slowed fractionally. The trembling in her legs decreased. Maya kept humming, her throat aching with effort. The flashlight beams grew closer. Voices called out in Swahili, coordinating a search pattern. They'd find her within minutes. Maya's mind raced through options. The river was half a mile east, too far for Ghost's injured state. The main road lay north, but that meant crossing open ground where they'd be visible. South led deeper into the bush, toward territory controlled by the poaching ring. West was the sanctuary. But between here and safety stood at least 5 armed men who'd already proven they'd kill without hesitation. Ghost nudged Maya's shoulder with her trunk, a gentle touch despite circumstances. The elephant's eyes had changed. The panic had receded, replaced by something else. Determination. Maybe. Or acceptance of whatever came next. Maya made her decision. She grabbed Ghost's ear, pulling herself up using handholds she'd practiced during peaceful days. The elephant stood firm, understanding despite pain. Maya settled onto Ghost's back, feeling muscles bunch beneath her. She leaned forward, whispering directly into the massive ear. Ghost moved through the darkness with surprising stealth for a creature weighing 7 tons. Maya clung to the elephant's back, branches whipping her face as they pushed deeper into territory she didn't recognize. Behind them, confused shouts indicated the poachers had reached the spot where they'd been hiding. The men had expected to find a cornered animal. Instead, they found empty forest. Maya's thighs burned from gripping Ghost's sides. She'd ridden horses as a child, but never imagined the raw power of an elephant in motion. Every step covered yards. Ghost navigated by instinct, avoiding clearings where moonlight might expose them, choosing paths where undergrowth muffled their passage. The wound on her side continued bleeding. Maya could feel warm moisture soaking through her jeans where her leg pressed against the injury. They needed medical supplies. They needed backup. They needed a miracle. What they had was each other and the African night. Ghost suddenly stopped, her trunk extending to test the air. Maya heard it a second later. Running water. The river wasn't half a mile east. Ghost had found a tributary, a smaller waterway that fed into the main channel. The elephant moved forward cautiously, entering the stream with barely a splash. Cool water rose to Maya's knees as Ghost waded deeper, heading upstream. Brilliant. The water would hide their scent from tracking dogs. It would wash away blood trails. It gave them a path the poachers wouldn't expect. Maya patted Ghost's neck, receiving a rumble of acknowledgement that vibrated through her entire body. They traveled upstream for what felt like hours. Maya's legs went numb, her clothes soaked through. Moonlight painted the water silver, creating shadows that jumped and shifted with every ripple. Once, Ghost froze completely, and Maya heard voices on the bank. The poachers had spread out, searching both sides of the tributary. Flashlight beams danced across the water's surface, passing within feet of where they stood in deeper darkness beneath overhanging branches. Maya held her breath. Ghost remained absolutely still, a living statue. The voices moved away. They waited 5 full minutes before continuing. Dawn was breaking when Ghost finally climbed from the water onto a muddy bank Maya recognized. They'd circled back toward the sanctuary but approached from the south, the one direction the poachers wouldn't watch. Ghost's steps had grown labored. The elephant swayed with exhaustion and blood loss. Maya slid from her back, her own legs nearly giving out when she tried to stand. The sanctuary fence was visible through morning mist. Beyond it, Maya saw movement. People were awake, probably organized into search parties. She opened her mouth to shout, then heard the distinctive crack of a gunshot. Bark exploded from a tree beside her head. They'd been waiting. The poachers had predicted she'd return here. Ghost trumpeted in alarm, spinning to face the threat. A man emerged from the undergrowth, rifle raised. He wasn't aiming at Maya. He was aiming at Ghost, targeting the elephant's head for a kill shot that would end everything. Maya launched herself at him without thinking. Her shoulder caught him in the ribs, disrupting his aim. The rifle discharged into the air. They went down together, Maya fighting with desperate fury born of protective instinct. She'd never been in a physical fight before. Training couldn't prepare her for the reality of violence. The way fists felt against flesh. The taste of blood when his elbow caught her mouth. But Ghost had been in fights. Ghost had been beaten for 20 years. Ghost knew violence intimately. The elephant's trunk wrapped around the man's torso, lifting him bodily into the air. He screamed, dropping the rifle. Ghost slammed him against the ground. Once. Twice. On the third impact, he stopped screaming. Ghost dropped him, and turned to Maya. Trunk extended in concern. More shouts erupted from multiple directions. The gunshot had alerted everyone. Poachers were converging from the bush. Sanctuary staff were rushing from the compound. Maya was caught between them with a bleeding elephant and growing certainty that someone was going to die before this ended. A vehicle engine roared to life behind the sanctuary fence. The main gates burst open, and a Land Rover shot through, driven by someone Maya recognized. Dr. Amara, the wildlife veterinarian from the regional office. The vehicle skidded to a stop between Maya and the approaching poachers. Dr. Amara leaned out the window, her expression fierce. She wasn't alone. The Land Rover's bed held 4 Kenyan Wildlife Service Rangers in full tactical gear. They deployed with practiced efficiency, weapons raised, creating a protective barrier. The poachers melted back into the bush. They were criminals, not soldiers. They wouldn't engage trained rangers in direct confrontation. Dr. Amara jumped from the vehicle, medical kit already in hand. She assessed Ghost with experienced eyes, noting the wound, the blood loss, the exhaustion. Her gaze moved to Maya, taking in torn clothes, bruises forming on exposed skin, the wild look of someone who'd spent a night running for her life. Dr. Amara smiled grimly. She'd been trying to reach the sanctuary since yesterday when she'd heard about the director's injury. The roads had been blocked, phones jammed, but she'd known something was wrong. She'd brought rangers and driven through the night to arrive at dawn. Ghost's legs finally gave out. The elephant sank to her knees, then rolled onto her side. "Doctor!" Amara moved immediately, barking orders. Rangers formed a perimeter. Maya dropped beside Ghost's head, cradling the massive skull in her lap. The elephant's eye found hers, still trusting despite pain. Dr. Amara worked with swift precision, her hands steady as she examined Ghost's wound. The gash was deep, bone deep in places, but the blade had miraculously missed major arteries. Still, infection was almost guaranteed given the filthy weapons poachers used. Ghost needed antibiotics, fluids, possibly surgery. The sanctuary's medical facility was adequate for routine care, but not equipped for emergency trauma. Maya stroked Ghost's trunk, feeling the shallow breaths. The elephant's skin had taken on an ashen tone beneath the gray hide. Shock was setting in, compounding blood loss. Without immediate intervention, Ghost would die within hours. Dr. Amara's phone rang. She answered, listened, and her expression darkened. She ended the call and looked at Maya with eyes that held bad news. The regional veterinary hospital had been contacted. They'd agreed to take Ghost, but transportation was the problem. The specialized trailer needed to move a 7-ton elephant was 4 hours away. The roads between here and there passed through territory controlled by the same poaching syndicate. Rangers could provide escort, but the journey would be dangerous, slow, and might trigger a confrontation that put everyone at risk. Maya felt the weight of the decision settling on her shoulders. Ghost trusted her. Ghost had followed her through darkness, had protected her when the poacher attacked. Now, Ghost's life hung on choices Maya wasn't qualified to make. Ghost's trunk moved weakly, wrapping around Maya's wrist. The gesture was gentle, almost tender. Maya thought of all the research she'd done on elephant emotion and cognition. She remembered reading about elephant mothers who refused to leave dead calves, who understood loss in ways that suggested profound emotional depth. Ghost had never had a calf. The circus had kept her isolated, alone, performing tricks for crowds that saw her as entertainment, rather than a sentient being capable of love and grief. Maya made a decision that would later be called either brilliant or reckless depending on who told the story. She refused to move. Ghost. The elephant was too weak, too traumatized. The journey would likely kill her. Instead, Maya demanded they bring the hospital to Ghost. She wanted the best veterinary surgeon in Kenya brought here, wanted equipment transported, wanted the sanctuary converted into an emergency operating room. Dr. Amara stared at her. The logistics were impossible. The cost would be enormous. The sanctuary barely had funding for daily operations. But something in Maya's expression stopped her protests. This young woman had survived a night being hunted by killers. She'd bonded with an elephant everyone else had written off. She'd earned the right to make audacious demands. Dr. Amara made calls. She pulled favors, made promises she'd have to keep later, bullied reluctant officials. Within an hour, a helicopter was inbound carrying Dr. Kofi, Kenya's foremost expert in elephant surgery. Equipment followed in a second flight. The sanctuary staff cleared the largest barn, creating a sterile field using tarps and portable generators. Ghost remained conscious throughout preparations. Her eye tracked Maya's movements, never leaving her for long. Maya stayed close, murmuring constant reassurance. She told Ghost about the life waiting after recovery. She described fields where Ghost could roam freely, mud wallows where she could bathe, other elephants who would become family. She promised Ghost would never perform another trick, never feel a bullhook, never know fear again. Dr. Kofi arrived like a force of nature, barking orders before his helicopter had fully landed. He was 60 years old, with hands scarred from decades of work and eyes that assessed Ghost's condition in seconds. He conferred briefly with Dr. Amara, examined the wound, calculated dosages. He looked at Maya and asked a single question. Would Ghost remain calm during surgery, or would she panic and injure herself further? Maya promised Ghost would stay calm if she could stay present. Dr. Kofi nodded. Against every protocol, he agreed to let Maya remain in the surgical field. She'd have to scrub, wear protective gear, stay out of the way. But she could talk to Ghost, could maintain the connection that had kept them both alive through the night. The surgery lasted 6 hours. Dr. Kofi worked with meticulous care, cleaning the wound, removing contaminated tissue, checking for internal damage. The blade had cracked a rib but hadn't penetrated the chest cavity. Ghost's thick hide had saved her life. Dr. Amara administered antibiotics, fluids, pain medication. Monitors tracked heart rate, breathing, body temperature. Numbers fluctuated dangerously several times, and each crisis brought tense moments where everyone waited to see if Ghost would pull through. Maya talked throughout. Her voice grew hoarse, but she never stopped. She told Ghost about her childhood in London, about the first time she'd seen an elephant at a zoo and known she wanted to dedicate her life to helping them. She described her university years, the long nights studying, the dream of coming to Africa. She confessed her fears, her doubts, her moments of wondering if she was strong enough for this work. Ghost's eye never closed. The elephant listened to every word. When pain spiked and Ghost's massive body tensed, Maya's voice became a lifeline, pulling her back from the edge. The connection between them was visible to everyone in the room. Dr. Kofi later admitted he'd never witnessed anything like it. The elephant should have thrashed, should have reacted violently to the pain and stress. Instead, Ghost remained still, trusting the human who'd promised her safety. As the sun set, Dr. Kofi placed the final suture. The wound was closed, cleaned, dressed. Ghost had received enough antibiotics to fight off infection. Her vital signs had stabilized. She'd survived the surgery. The next 72 hours would determine if survival became recovery. Maya collapsed beside Ghost's head, exhaustion finally overwhelming adrenaline. Rangers had secured the sanctuary perimeter. The poachers had vanished, likely regrouping and planning their next move. The ivory trade was worth millions. One failed attempt wouldn't stop them. They'd be back. But for now, in the quiet of the barn, Maya and Ghost rested together. The elephant's breathing was deep and regular. Her trunk rested across Maya's legs, a weight that felt like trust made tangible. Maya woke to darkness and the sensation of being watched. Ghost's eye reflected moonlight streaming through the barn's high windows. The elephant was awake, alert, studying Maya with an intensity that sent chills down her spine. Something had changed during the surgery. The wall Ghost had maintained between herself and the world had cracked. Behind the physical wounds, deeper injuries were beginning to surface. Dr. Amara appeared with food and coffee. She reported that Ghost's temperature had dropped to normal ranges. No signs of infection yet, though the critical window remained open. The wound was draining properly. Ghost had urinated, indicating kidney function was stable. All positive indicators. But Dr. Amara's expression held concern beyond the physical. Maya understood without being told. Ghost was grieving. The surgery had saved her body but awakened memories the elephant had suppressed. 20 years of abuse, isolation, fear. Ghost had survived by shutting down emotionally, by retreating into neurotic behaviors that created distance from pain. Now, with safety and kindness surrounding her, the walls were crumbling. Ghost was finally processing trauma she'd never been allowed to feel. Elephants who experience severe trauma sometimes die even after physical healing. Their hearts simply stop, overwhelmed by emotional anguish they can't process. Maya had read case studies during her research. She'd never expected to witness it firsthand. Ghost was physically recovering, but emotionally fragmenting. Maya moved closer, placing both hands on Ghost's face. The elephant's skin was warm, alive, but her eye held depths of sorrow Maya couldn't fathom. She began to talk again, changing tactics. Instead of promises about the future, Maya acknowledged the past. She spoke about the circus, the beatings, the loneliness. She named the pain rather than ignoring it. She told Ghost that suffering wasn't a weakness. Survival was strength. Living through horror and still being capable of trust was courage beyond measure. Ghost's trunk moved, exploring Maya's face with gentle touches. The elephant was listening, processing, beginning to understand that someone finally saw her not as a damaged animal, but as a survivor deserving of respect. Dawn brought unwelcome visitors. A government official arrived with documents demanding Ghost's transfer to a state facility. The sanctuary's license was under review following the director's injury. Questions were being raised about security, about the poaching incident, about whether private sanctuaries could adequately protect endangered animals. The official wanted Ghost moved immediately, claimed she'd receive better care elsewhere. Maya read the subtext. Someone with power wanted Ghost gone, either to cover up their involvement with the poaching ring or to seize control of a valuable asset. Ghost's tusks might be intact, but the genetic material from a breeding-age female elephant was worth a fortune to the right buyers. Legal channels could be as corrupt as criminal ones. Dr. Amara argued with the official. She cited Ghost's fragile condition, the surgery barely completed, the risk of moving her. The official was unmoved. He had orders from Nairobi. Ghost would be transferred within 24 hours. Rangers would return to facilitate transport. End of discussion. After he left, Dr. Amara and Maya sat in silence. They both knew what transfer meant. Ghost would disappear into a system where oversight was minimal and corruption was endemic. She might survive physically but would never recover emotionally. The trust she'd begun to rebuild would shatter permanently. Maya made her second audacious decision. She refused to let Ghost be taken. She'd stay with the elephant, physically block any attempt at removal. Let them arrest her. Let them create an international incident. She'd contact every media outlet, every conservation organization, every person with influence. She'd turn Ghost's story into a symbol that forced the government to act with transparency. Dr. Amara smiled sadly. Noble intentions, but ultimately futile. Maya was a foreign student with no legal standing. She could be deported before her message reached anyone who mattered. The system knew how to silence lone voices, but they weren't alone. The sanctuary staff gathered, declaring their support. Rangers who'd fought off the poachers offered to resign their positions rather than facilitate Ghost's transfer. Dr. Kofi returned unexpectedly, saying he'd stake his professional reputation on Ghost's need to remain undisturbed. Word spread through the conservation community. By noon, journalists were calling. By evening, international wildlife organizations were issuing statements. Ghost's story had touched something larger than one elephant's struggle. She represented every animal trapped in cycles of abuse, every creature whose suffering went unnoticed, every life deemed expendable by systems prioritizing profit over compassion. Maya hadn't intended to start a movement. She'd simply refused to abandon someone who trusted her. The government official returned that night. His demeanor changed. Orders from Nairobi had been amended. Ghost could remain at the sanctuary pending a full investigation into the poaching incident. The official's career now depended on the case being handled properly. Too many eyes were watching. Too many questions were being asked. Corruption thrived in darkness. Maya had dragged everything into harsh light. Ghost slept through the political maneuvering, her body focused on healing. But when she woke, she seemed to sense the shift. The tension in the barn had eased. People moved with less urgency. More hope. Ghost's trunk explored her bandaged side gently, feeling the stitches, understanding she'd been repaired rather than harmed. Maya witnessed a change in Ghost's eyes. The sorrow remained, but something else emerged alongside it. Not quite happiness. More like possibility. The awareness that life might hold experiences beyond pain. That trust might be rewarded rather than betrayed. That a human's touch could heal rather than hurt. Dr. Kofi examined Ghost and declared himself cautiously optimistic. The wound showed no infection. Ghost was eating, drinking, responding well to medication. The physical recovery was progressing better than expected. The emotional recovery remained uncertain. But Ghost was engaging with her surroundings, rather than retreating into neurotic behaviors. Small victories that suggested larger healing might be possible. 3 days after surgery, Ghost stood. The movement was slow, painful, but deliberate. She rose to her feet under her own power, swaying slightly before finding balance. Maya watched with tears streaming down her face. The sanctuary staff gathered, silent witnesses to a moment that felt like resurrection. Ghost had been written off as too damaged, too broken. Now she stood, choosing life despite everything she'd endured. But standing was only the beginning. Ghost's journey to full recovery would take months, possibly years. The physical wound would heal. The emotional scars ran deeper than any blade could cut. Maya committed to staying, extending her student visa, applying for long-term work permits. She'd finish her degree remotely if necessary. Ghost needed her, and Maya refused to be another human who walked away. The poachers hadn't given up. Intelligence reports indicated they were regrouping, planning another attempt. Ghost's survival had become an insult to their operations. More than that, the media attention had triggered investigations into their network. Arrests had been made. Supply chains were disrupted. Ghost had inadvertently become a threat to their entire operation, simply by surviving. Security around the sanctuary intensified. Rangers established permanent positions. Surveillance equipment monitored the perimeter. Maya received training in basic security protocols and was issued a radio to carry at all times. She refused a weapon, believing that carrying instruments of death while trying to heal life created contradictions she couldn't reconcile. Ghost began physical therapy. Dr. Amara designed a program to rebuild strength and flexibility. Maya walked beside the elephant during exercise sessions, encouraging, praising, celebrating small progress. Ghost's gait improved. The wound's inflammation decreased. Appetite increased. Each positive indicator felt like a victory against the forces that had tried to destroy them both. Other elephants at the sanctuary initially kept their distance from Ghost. They sensed her trauma, her otherness. Elephants are deeply social creatures who maintain complex hierarchies and relationships. Ghost had been alone so long, she'd forgotten how to be part of a herd. She stood at the watering hole's edge while others bathed. She ate her hay separate from communal feeding times. She existed in proximity to other elephants, without truly connecting. Maya recognized the isolation. Ghost had survived by building walls. Now those same walls prevented the healing that could only come through connection with her own kind. Human love could support, but it couldn't replace the bonds between elephants. Ghost needed to rejoin her species, to remember what she'd lost during those 20 years of forced solitude. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. A young elephant named Juno, barely 2 years old, wandered away from his mother during feeding time. He approached Ghost with the fearless curiosity of youth. Ghost tensed, unused to uninvited contact. Juno reached out with his small trunk, touching Ghost's face. The gesture was pure, innocent, untainted by expectation or demand. Ghost stood frozen. Maya held her breath, watching from a distance. Juno's mother approached cautiously, ready to protect her calf if Ghost reacted violently. Instead, Ghost's trunk extended slowly, gently returning the touch. Juno trumpeted with delight, interpreting the response as invitation to play. He circled Ghost, his small body dancing with energy. Ghost watched the young elephant with an expression Maya had never seen before. Wonder. Maybe. Or remembering what joy looked like when it hadn't been beaten out of existence. Juno's mother relaxed, recognizing that Ghost posed no threat. She rumbled a low greeting. Ghost rumbled back. The first voluntary communication with another elephant since arriving at the sanctuary. Over the following weeks, Juno became Ghost's constant companion. The young elephant seemed to sense Ghost's need for gentle, undemanding affection. He rested against her side during hot afternoons. He shared his food, even when Ghost had her own. He led her to the mud wallows and showed her how to play again. Ghost's responses were tentative at first, then gradually more confident. The walls were coming down, brick by brick. Maya watched the transformation with awe. She'd provided safety, medical care, and emotional support. But Juno offered something Maya couldn't. Belonging. Ghost was remembering how to be an elephant, not just a survivor of human cruelty. The neurotic swaying stopped. Ghost began spending nights near the other elephants rather than isolated in her own space. She participated in herd behaviors, learning social cues she'd forgotten or perhaps had never been taught. Then came the night that changed everything. Maya was awakened by urgent trumpeting. She ran to the elephant enclosures, expecting attack, finding instead chaos of a different kind. Ghost stood in the center of the compound, surrounded by every elephant in the sanctuary. They formed a protective circle. Trunks raised, ears flared. Their posture was defensive, aggressive even. Maya's heart sank, thinking Ghost had been rejected, attacked by the herd. She was wrong. The elephants weren't threatening Ghost. They were protecting her. Rangers rushed from multiple directions. Weapons, ready. They'd heard the trumpeting, assumed poachers had breached the perimeter. Instead, they found the elephants standing guard over Ghost, who was lying on her side in obvious distress. Dr. Amara arrived within minutes, already knowing what she'd find. The other elephants had known first. Elephants can detect pregnancy in their herd members through scent and behavioral changes. They'd sensed something Maya and the medical team had missed during their focus on trauma recovery. Ghost was pregnant. The calf had been conceived before her rescue from the circus, probably during a brief contact with a male elephant during transport or at a temporary holding facility. The pregnancy had progressed unnoticed, hidden beneath layers of trauma and physical injury. Ghost was going into labor. 3 weeks after nearly dying from poachers' blades, Ghost was about to give birth. The compound erupted into controlled chaos. Dr. Amara shouted orders while Dr. Kofi was contacted via emergency satellite phone. Ghost's pregnancy had been missed because nobody looked for it. A traumatized, malnourished elephant, showing signs of stress and injury, fit no diagnostic profile, suggesting she was carrying a calf. Yet here they were, with Ghost in active labor and absolutely no preparation for the complications that were inevitable. Maya dropped to her knees beside Ghost's head. The elephant's eye rolled with pain and fear. Elephant births typically lasted hours. But Ghost's weakened condition and recent surgery created dangerous variables. The wound on her side had healed enough to withstand normal activity, but the strain of labor could tear stitches, restart bleeding, trigger infections that antibiotics wouldn't control fast enough. The other elephants maintained their protective circle. Juno's mother rumbled constantly, a sound that seemed to comfort Ghost. In the wild, female elephants attended births, offering support and protection. The sanctuary herd had recognized Ghost as one of their own and responded according to ancient instinct. They wouldn't leave her. They wouldn't let her face this alone. Dr. Amara examined Ghost quickly, her expression grim. The calf was positioned correctly, but Ghost's pelvis had been damaged during circus years, probably from beatings or forced performances on hard surfaces. The birth canal was narrowed, creating a dangerous passage for the calf. They could attempt to assist delivery, but physical intervention carried massive risk. Ghost's trauma made her unpredictable when in pain. She might thrash, might injure herself, or anyone trying to help. Maya made her third critical decision. She told Dr. Amara to prepare for assisted delivery, but to wait unless absolutely necessary. Maya would stay with Ghost, would talk her through the labor, would be the anchor keeping Ghost grounded in trust rather than terror. If Ghost could deliver naturally, that was the safest option. If complications arose, Dr. Amara would intervene. But they'd give Ghost every chance to do this herself. The labor intensified. Ghost's trumpets of pain echoed across the sanctuary. Maya talked continuously, her voice hoarse but steady. She described the calf waiting to be born. The new life Ghost had carried through horror and violence. She told Ghost that bringing this baby into the world would be the ultimate act of defiance against everyone who'd tried to break her. Ghost had been told she was too damaged for love, too broken to deserve gentleness. The calf would prove them wrong. Ghost was about to become a mother, would experience the deepest bond elephants know. Hours passed. Dawn approached. Ghost's strength was failing. The calf hadn't progressed. Dr. Amara made the call to intervene. She administered medications to help contractions while preparing instruments for assisted extraction. Maya continued talking, her hands on Ghost's face, maintaining eye contact. Ghost had to stay present, had to keep fighting. The other elephants began a behavior Dr. Amara had only read about. They started digging. Their trunks scooped earth, creating a shallow depression around Ghost. In the wild, elephant herds sometimes modified terrain to help with difficult births. The depression would give the newborn calf a softer landing, would make it easier for Ghost to reach her baby immediately after delivery. These captive elephants, many of them rescued from various traumas, were performing instinctive behaviors that suggested elephants never truly forgot what they were meant to be. The calf's head appeared. Ghost screamed, a sound of agony that made Maya's chest hurt. Dr. Amara worked with urgent efficiency, helping guide the calf through the narrowed passage. Ghost pushed with everything she had left. The wound on her side began bleeding again, red spreading across the bandage. Dr. Amara shouted for additional supplies. Rangers formed human chains passing equipment. Then, in the moment just before sunrise, the calf emerged. A tiny elephant, impossibly small compared to Ghost's massive form. The baby was covered in birthing fluids, not moving, not breathing. Dr. Amara grabbed the calf, clearing its mouth and trunk. Seconds stretched like hours. The baby remained still. Maya's heart broke. After everything Ghost had survived, to lose her calf would be a cruelty beyond measure. She wanted to scream at the universe for this injustice. Instead, she kept her hands on Ghost, kept talking, because Ghost deserved to know she wasn't alone even in this darkest moment. Then the calf coughed. A wet, sputtering sound that was the most beautiful thing Maya had ever heard. The baby moved, legs twitching. Dr. Amara rubbed vigorously, stimulating circulation and breathing. The calf coughed again. then took a shuddering breath. Alive. Against all odds. Alive. Ghost lifted her head, her trunk reaching for the calf. Dr. Amara placed the baby near Ghost's face. Mother and calf touched, trunk to trunk. A first meeting that carried the weight of everything Ghost had endured to reach this moment. Ghost rumbled. A sound so deep, Maya felt it in her bones. The other elephants answered, their trumpets celebrating new life. The calf was female, tiny but perfect. She struggled to her feet, with determination that mirrored her mother's. 4 wobbly legs found balance. The baby elephant stood, swaying, but upright. Ghost guided her toward the source of milk, instinct and love combining into maternal care that nobody had taught her but she somehow knew. Maya stood back, tears streaming freely now. Dr. Amara was checking Ghost's wound, applying fresh bandages, administering more medication. The bleeding had stopped. Ghost's vital signs remained stable despite the trauma of birth. The elephant's strength continued to defy every prediction. As the sun rose, painting the sanctuary in gold light, Maya watched Ghost nurse her daughter. The baby elephant fed hungrily while Juno stood guard nearby, taking his role as protector seriously despite his young age. The other elephants had settled around them, forming a living barrier between the new family and any potential threat. Dr. Kofi arrived by helicopter an hour later, having traveled through the night. He examined mother and calf, his experienced hands gentle and thorough. He declared them both stable, healthy, miraculous. He looked at Maya with respect that hadn't been present before. She'd made impossible decisions, and somehow gotten them right. She'd trusted Ghost when nobody else would. She'd refused to accept that trauma-defined destiny. The government official who'd tried to transfer Ghost returned that afternoon. He saw Ghost with her calf surrounded by the protective herd. He saw the international media camped outside the sanctuary fence. He saw his career would end if he attempted to separate them now. He left without saying a word. Maya named the calf Hope. Ghost touched the baby constantly, as if confirming she was real. Juno appointed himself big brother, teaching Hope everything he knew despite being barely older himself. The sanctuary herd accepted Hope immediately, the way elephant families do. Over the following months, Ghost's physical wounds healed completely. The emotional wounds would never fully close, but they became scars rather than open agonies. Ghost learned to play again, to splash in mud wallows, to trumpet with joy rather than pain. She raised Hope with fierce protectiveness, but also gentleness, that came from understanding what childhood should be. Ghost had lost her own innocence to human cruelty. She was determined. Hope would never know that particular suffering. Maya stayed. She completed her degree remotely, published her thesis on Ghost's recovery, used the resulting attention to secure funding for expanded sanctuary operations. She became assistant director when the original director retired after recovering from his injuries. She devoted her career to ensuring Ghost and elephants like her had safe spaces to heal. The poaching ring was eventually dismantled through investigations triggered by Ghost's case. Arrests reached into government offices, revealed corruption networks spanning multiple countries. Ghost's survival hadn't just saved one elephant. It had exposed systems that profited from wildlife suffering. The impact rippled far beyond what Maya had imagined possible. Years later, when Hope had her own calf, Maya stood beside Ghost, watching 3 generations of elephants together. Ghost had been told she was too big for love, too damaged for motherhood, too broken for happiness. She'd proven them wrong through sheer determination and the willingness to trust one human who refused to give up on her. Maya thought about the night they'd fled through darkness, hunted, and bleeding. She remembered thinking they needed a miracle. They'd made their own miracle through connection, through choosing hope over despair, through refusing to let trauma have the final word. Ghost's trunk wrapped around Maya's shoulders, a gesture of affection that still moved her even after all this time. The elephant's eye held peace now. The kind that comes after surviving hell and choosing to believe in tomorrow anyway. Maya leaned into the touch, grateful beyond words. They said she was too big for love. But love had proven bigger than all the cruelty that tried to destroy it. Ghost bore life, not just physically, but spiritually. She'd reclaimed her soul from those who'd tried to crush it. She'd become a mother, a member of a herd, a symbol of resilience that inspired people worldwide. And it all started because one human touched her with kindness in the darkness, and Ghost chose to believe that touch promised something better than everything she'd known before.